Are you thinking about coming to America to live, to work, to study? If you're not a citizen of the United States, well, you're going to need permission. And what kind of permission? Well, that's what this episode is all about. Welcome to Expats in Austin. If this is your first time with us, we cover expatriates and the expatriate life here in Austin, Texas. This episode will probably go down as one of the most challenging ever for me. The subject? Immigration. You see, when we started the Expats in Austin series, we wanted to avoid the subject of immigration for two main reasons. One, it's really complex. And two, it's a political hot button. Well, surprise, surprise. It's really hard to discuss expatriates without discussing immigration and the temporary visas. My guest is Jason Finkelman. He's an immigration lawyer here in Austin, Texas. I first came across Jason, quite by accident, in one of his many YouTube discussions. He seemed really approachable, and his explanations are quite clear. Anyway, I know all about immigration and green cards from personal experience. My British wife and we got her green card in 1984. We also recently assisted 3 of our 4 children, all of whom are American, as they went through the green card process with their respective European spouses. So I contacted Jason, and he agreed to talk. And we made the appointment. What could possibly go wrong? And Jason spoke with real clarity and a surprising candor. Now, I offer my own clarity and candor. Yes, I learned a heck of a lot, and I am now definitely a smarter man. Thank you, Jason. But like many good discussions, I came away with more questions than answers, even though he answered all of my questions. But I wanted to know more. I needed to know more. So after Jason and I hung up, I did a bit of research. 2 weeks and 1 stack of paper later, I crawled out of the rabbit hole. And I am now convinced, more than ever, that the subject of immigration and temporary visas is more complex than we can possibly imagine. Apparently, it takes a specialist. Meet Jason Finkelman.
It's a failure to think that any immigration process is black and white or one size fits all. It's quite the contrary, especially today. You know, you need to file an application that tells your unique story, that is persuasive and proactive, because the failure to think, oh, I just copy what my friend did and put it in my application is just a recipe for disaster.
So what, apart from calling a lawyer, an attorney to help you
Mhm.
through this, a professional, um, what's the very next best thing that anybody can do? And now I open it up not just to spouses and immediate family, but also to extended family, and then as well employees. What's the thing that they can do to make sure that to get this going just a little bit faster, a little bit easier?
I would say probably be organized, be highly detailed, focus on providing more than you would expect in terms of evidence to back up your claim for your case, and to just be ready to be patient. And there's long waits.
Take a deep breath and count to 10 and just go play the long game.
Yeah, I mean, I use the case of entrepreneurs. I deal with lots of foreign entrepreneurs, and everyone has different ways where things are done in their countries, right? There's bribes are sometimes allowed in their home country, or you got to know this guy to pull this lever, or I just call this thing and make it go faster. And I typically tell people here, that's not how it works here at all. Doesn't matter who you know, how rich you are, how powerful you are, it ain't going to make a dime of difference. And so this will be a challenging process. And the more you can come armed with significant documentation and information to allay the concerns of that immigration officer, the stronger your case, the better your chance of success.
So to be specific, documentation.
Oh, I mean, it just depends on the type of visa you're coming for. So if you're applying for an employment-based visa, the employer is going to have to show everything from tax returns, all the way to, and I know this is going to sound crazy, to photos of the office space, floor plans of the office, a list of every single employee of the company, what every single person in the company's degree is in. I mean, ludicrous stuff. And if you're the employee, paycheck stubs, academic credentials, passport information, bank information. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. There's a significant amount of documentation on the employment side, or on the family-based side. I mean, the last administration put into place an exorbitant amount of new requirements that are frankly a wealth test for foreign nationals seeking to come to this country. So it's, providing tax returns and, again, educational credentials, proof of your joint life together, birth certificates, marriage certificates, previous divorce certificates. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Is there a number for this wealth test that you're
There is.
how is
Well, there's always been in place on the family-based side an application called an affidavit of support, where the U.S. Petitioner, the U.S. spouse, has to show with their income tax returns that they basically have liquid assets in excess of $1 more than the poverty guideline for their particular household size.
Okay.
And that's so that the spouse, God forbid, the U.S. citizen spouse can't work, won't become a public charge. They won't take public benefits or welfare, things like that.
Okay, then.
But the new administration came in and put in an additional hurdle in this process, which is currently being litigated, to show that the spouse has good credit, can speak English. What assets do they have that shows they will also be here and not be a quote public charge.
I want to make sure that we're getting to the points that were important to you. We listed a couple of things that you wanted to talk about.
Well, so let's talk about the H-1B, because that's the most time sensitive one. So
please,
there are many different types of, like we talked about before, non-immigrant temporary visas to the U.S. And of those, there's only a handful that actually provide U.S. work authorization. Currently, we're in a period where one of the more, if not the most, popular non-immigrant temporary work visa is becoming the issue of the year. And that visa is called the H-1B visa. And so the H-1B visa really has two requirements. One, that there's a U.S. employer that's going to sponsor a foreign national for a job that at a minimum requires a bachelor's degree or higher to perform the functions of that position. So thousands of different jobs, tech jobs, engineering job, marketing job, all those jobs probably require a bachelor's degree. That's requirement one. Requirement two is that the foreign national has in their hands a bachelor's degree or higher that relates to the position the U.S. employer wants to hire them for. Great. The H-1B visa is the only visa, non-immigrant visa, that has a cap or a limit on the amount of visas that are issued each year. And that number is 85,000, which, again, as we talked about earlier, was set in 1990. Okay. So there are 85,000 available H-1B visas, and those visas become available for, let's call it registration for those visas or application for those visas in the first few weeks of March. Okay.
That's coming up soon.
That's coming up real soon. So every year there are thousands of employers, U.S. employers across the country, that file these registrations in the first few weeks of March for anyone that they want to sponsor for an H-1B visa. What happens during those first few weeks of March is USCIS gets more registrations than there are available H-1B visas, those 85,000. So they go, uh-oh, we got a problem. We got way too many registrations for these available visas. They close it down. They say, okay, we're going to take all the registrations we received in these first few weeks of March and put them in a computer-generated lottery system. We're going to let a computer select at random the 85,000 that will then be invited, if they're selected in that lottery, to submit a full application. And if that application is approved, the visa becomes active to use on October 1st. So March, first few weeks of March, submit the registration. By the end of March, they'll conduct a lottery of all the registrations. If the registration is selected, you submit a full application. If that application is approved, visa becomes active to use on October 1st. If you're not selected in that lottery, sorry, try again another year. By way of example, last year in 2020, USCIS received over 275,000 H-1B registrations for those 85,000 available visas. So mathematically, you got probably less than a 40% chance of getting one of those visas. But as the old saying goes, you got to pay to play. And so what's happening each year is that number gets more and more. Why? Because US employers are in desperate need for the best global talent they need to grow and innovate their businesses, whether you're a one-person startup or you're Google or Facebook. And if you're a recent student, a foreign national student who's here, it's your ticket to get to stay with that employer and continue to be here and work. And ultimately, as we talked about earlier, maybe be on a pathway to a green card and citizenship. So it is basically the next 30 days is the Super Bowl of the year for employment-based immigration lawyers and for US employers who go, okay, if I don't take a shot at playing in this lottery in the next 30 days here, I'm not going to be able to hire this person at least until October 2022, right? So you got lots of foreign nationals going, especially young students that are here. There's hundreds of thousands of young students going, oh my God, I got to be here. I got to get lucky in this lottery. Employers going, oh man, if I don't get selected in this lottery, I got a problem. Or this person selected in the lottery. So it's a really, really big deal. It's the biggest sort of point of the year for employment-based immigration employers and for U.S. employers and for foreign national, what they call skilled workers or professionals.
Well, first of all, thanks for taking so much time out of what must be a very busy period for you right now. You're still spending so much time with us, so thank you for that.
My pleasure.
At the beginning of your explanation there, you mentioned that there are a bunch of applications, and they continue to arrive, and then suddenly the authorities say, "Whoa, we've got enough."
Well, they say they have a designated registration period. So this year, I know it's going to be March 9th through the 25th. So they say we will close it on the 25th. Submit your application between March 9th and March 25th.
So whether it's 275,000 or 300,000 or 100,000, that number is likely
Correct.
to change every year.
In fact, it does. Every year over year, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Can you give us a sense of scale? Let's say in 1990, do you have numbers for 1990 versus or maybe even the last 10 years, something like that to let us know?
Yeah, well, actually, what's funny is early, when this cap was set at 85,000, they said, well, and the process was different back then. But when they set the number at 85,000, they go, we're not even going to get 85,000 registrations, and they didn't. So early on this process, and there's been years going back to when we had the recession, the last recession. There were years where they didn't hit the 85,000, right? The economy was crashing and there weren't a lot of people hiring. And there's arguments to say, oh, well, this year we're in a pandemic. Maybe not a lot of people are going to apply. I think that's unlikely just because I think foreign nationals are coming here and getting majors and degrees in very highly specialized areas that they know U.S. employers need because they know it's their ticket to staying here and for a life here in this country. But yeah, the number has just increased year over year. Some years it hasn't been hit, what they call the cap during the registration period. Most of the time it has, at least over the last decade. Of time.
Okay, and then you guide them along to the green card. At what point do they contact you and say, okay, I need a lawyer. This is either too complex for me, or I want to take it to the next level?
Usually right away, someone will contact me when they go, oh, I'm going to get married to someone, and they'll Google someone, how to get a green card through marriage, and they'll see how complicated the process is and how murky the process can be, and they'll reach out to an immigration attorney. Same thing with an employer who says, oh, we've got this really talented guy or girl who's working for us. We understand that they only have authorization to work for us for 12 months or 24 months, and that we might need to sponsor them for this thing called an H-1B visa or some other type of non-immigrant work visa. we don't understand this. Let's call Jason and figure out what we need to do. And when you talk about the lengths of time, again, there's employment-based green cards and there's family-based green cards. Again, not to overcomplicate the topic here, but I have to explain to people sometimes there are lines, literally waiting lines for people to get green cards, depending upon these different categories. For some of the most smartest, brilliant, hardworking people, the wait time today is somewhere, depending upon your country of birth, can be sometimes 30 to 40 years to get your green card.
That's an amazing factoid, and I guess that's something that you've witnessed this yourself. You've had to
Oh,
deal
yeah.
with this, right?
Yes. I have people that are here working and have been here for decades, working for big employers, literally just waiting for their what's called priority date or their place in line to be called so they can go get their green card.
I want to circle back to that in a second.
Sure.
I do. That's one of the things I really, really wanted to talk to you about that. So I want to be sure I understand this correctly. That we're looking at a flow chart.
Mhm.
You'd want to make a decision of whether it was going to be temporary or permanent. That's the first thing you decide to do. You choose. Is that correct?
Well, you don't technically have a choice,
Mhm.
right? So, or all the time.
Mhm.
If you're coming here for employment, 95% of the time, it's going to be on a non-immigrant temporary visa. And if you're good at what you do and the employer likes you and you like the employer, you might, over a period of many, many years, go through a process to have that employer sponsor you for a green card. If you're coming here based on marriage, you can apply directly or pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things for a green card directly through a U.S. citizen spouse or lawful permanent resident holder spouse.
Okay. Thanks. That's clear, at least in my mind. I'm sure who's ever listening to this got it much quicker than I did. Um, so now we're talking about waiting periods as long as decades.
Mhm.
What's the biggest challenge? What's holding them back?
Okay, let's think how to make this a digestible answer. So, the U.S. Department of State is responsible for the issuance of immigrant visas or of green cards. Green card is the slang terminology for immigrant visas. The U.S. Department of State has a finite amount of, let's call them green cards, that they issue each year. Over many, many decades, the U.S. Department of State has more people applying for those green cards or immigrant visas than there are available green cards. And so what's happened over many, many decades is now there's just creating a backlog of people applying, but not enough available immigrant visas. And so the line just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer.
Well, so the question is does the number change? First of all, what do we call that? I think I saw you call it something like a cap. Is it a green card
That's
cap?
something different.
Okay.
There's that's for an H-1B visa, but there
Okay.
is a finite amount of green cards that are issued each year. I don't want to say because I don't recall off the top of my head what that number is. I don't know. It's in the hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands that covers marriage as well as marriage, family, all the things that are called
Right,
family,
they're bifurcated. There's a finite for family base and a finite amount for employment base.
and each of those are defined. Right. Okay.
Correct.
And okay. And what does it take to expand that number?
Congress to pass comprehensive immigration reform. So actually, it's funny we're having this conversation today. Today, President Biden brought his legislation to the House of Representatives that would fundamentally change this process. Again, the last time the immigration laws in this country were updated was literally 1990, so over 30 years ago. We have a completely antiquated immigration system that doesn't reflect the realities of the world we live in. They were written before the internet took off, before globalization, before podcasting. They don't take into account the realities of the world we live in today. So it would take Congress to pass legislation to increase the numbers of immigrant visas or green cards that are available.
You said several times that this process that's in place now is antiquated. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you on behalf of my wife and myself that we now have an antiquated card. Thank you very much. I just It makes me feel just that much older. So that's very good. Thank you, Jason. She'll be pleased to hear that. The But are you saying that since 1990 there have been no increases
Mm,
in the
None.
fine? Really?
None, none. And again, we can talk about H-1Bs and other visa categories. The immigration laws in place today in 2021 are so mind-bogglingly antiquated. It's usually how I start off a consultation with a client, is actually saying, what I'm about to explain to you is going to make no sense in the reality of the world we live in today. So you're going to say to me, Jason, come on, this is not real. You're making this up. And I'm telling you, I'm not. It's because we have this broken, antiquated immigration system.
Wow. That's that explains a lot, actually. The fact that the pipeline has not, or the diameter of the pipe has not increased, but the number of people
Correct.
trying to get through it, that may not be the best
No,
analogy, but
that's it. That's the best analogy. That is.
broadband, whatever you want to use, but
That's it. More people keep applying, and we haven't increased that number. And the line keeps getting longer and longer. Now, the wait times can shrink, and they have from time to time. Every once in a while, they get a little bit shorter, not like dramatically, but the line is moving month to month via something called a visa bulletin, which is posted online by the Department of State, and it tells people when it's called a priority date, but their place in line is called to go get their green card. And for some categories, and I don't want to paint it as it's that this way for everybody. No, in fact, if you are what's called an immediate relative, so if you're a spouse of a U.S. citizen, there are infinite green cards available for you. So you get to move to the front of the line. You get to come in first. But if you're, a brother or sister, oh no, you're at the bottom of the line, and those wait times can be very, very long. Same thing on the employment side. If you're what they call, a foreign national of extraordinary ability, you're a Nobel Prize winner, you're an Olympic athlete, you are, creating the next, cure for cancer or COVID or whatever it is. Oh, you get to go to the top of the line much faster than if you're just a guy with a bachelor's degree.
okay. And without throwing the Department of State and all the good people at the USCIS
Mhm.
under the bus, things get faster and slower depending upon how things are at the offices there taking care of these things, or does that stay? Is that a constant?
It is a constant, right? So it's not their fault. So basically, again, I'm going to overly simplify things here, but talking about the green card process again, Department of State says, great, we've got a finite amount of green cards we can issue throughout the year, their fiscal year, and so they go, okay, let's say their fiscal year starts in January. It doesn't, but let's say it does. Okay, January they go, okay, we've got the full stack of green cards. Well, we're going to give out this many in this month. Well, if they got a lot of people applying for that particular month based on where their place is in line, they go, oh, we got to hold some more back in February. We gave too many out in January. Well, then in February, less people apply. They go, oh, no, in March, we're giving out more. So they're turning that spigot, as you say, on and they're moving the dial back and forth throughout the year to sort of say, hey, we've got too many or not enough. We gave out enough. They're moving that back and forth. And so that's why I say sometimes you may see your place in line jump significantly. Years. You may go, oh, now the wait, instead of, again, I had a 5-year wait. Next month, it's a 2-year wait. And then the following month, it might be a 3-year wait. And then the next month, it might be a 9-month wait. So there's no rhyme or reason.
And these are we're speaking specifically about the employment
Correct.
sorts of
Correct, but
these.
also on the family-based side of things. So
Hmm.
again, if we're not talking about immediate relatives, which is defined as children of U.S. citizens, spouses of U.S. Citizens, parents of U.S. citizens. They get to go to the front of the line. There's no wait,
Hmm.
technically speaking.
Hmm.
But if you're a spouse of a green card holder or a brother or sister, the wait's gonna be longer.
Okay. Okay. And what about, so somebody's in their late 20s, early 30s, they're thinking about coming over either as an employee or as a spouse, and they begin to worry about those younger days, those those moments of youthful indiscretion, which we all have, and which might be on record someplace in some country. What should they be doing about things like that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the U.S. Department of State or USCIS wants to know if you have any criminal records or citations. And I often take the approach of, be an open book. If you have some serious crime, some murder or theft or rape or something like that, yeah, you're probably not going to come to the U.S. You're not going to get a visa. You're not going to get a green card. But certain types of lesser crimes typically should not be an issue to bar you from entering to the U.S. I know, people are really concerned right now because the previous administration did a really excellent job of scaring people from the immigration process, and now they're starting to check social media handles in immigration applications, and so they're going, oh my god, well, what if I said the previous president was a POS, or he was an a-hole, or whatever it was. That's not going to bar you from getting a visa. They're really looking at social media handles to make sure you're not a terrorist or a drug dealer or a money launderer.
Let's go to that DWI or those string of speeding tickets.
Yeah, the speeding tickets, DWIs may, depending upon how that's handled in a criminal court, might be an issue. Depending
The
upon
criminal court of the country that of origin, or
both here and the U.S. And I don't want to delve too much into this because it's actually beyond the focus of my specialty. There's actually lawyers, we call them crimigation lawyers, because their practice is focused at the nexus of criminal law and immigration, and it's highly, highly technical. And so I don't know, other than if you have a DWI, usually when someone comes to me, it's like, I'm going to have to ask my colleague about that one because I don't know about this. But speeding tickets, or I've had people littering or open containers, or things like that aren't going to be issues.
So, what is the biggest or most common misunderstanding that the early applicant has about the immigration system or about the USA in general? Do you have any commonalities across the board?
Yeah, I think the most common misconception is that, it's easy to get me a visa. Just, I don't know, give me the application, let me write the application and get it in, and I'll be here in a couple of weeks, right? And it is not that case. It's a very slow, bureaucratic process that is expensive, and it does not fit within, as I said earlier, the realities of the world we live in today in 2021. It's just an antiquated system, and either you can creatively and lawfully fit within the eligibility requirements of the visa you're seeking, or you don't. And one of the things I often say, here's another great misconception to go into your question. People say, I'm an entrepreneur. Isn't there an entrepreneur visa to the US? You know what the answer to that is? No. And most people go, what? And I say, there is no such thing today of an entrepreneur visa. Other countries say, yeah, this is a no-brainer. We set benchmarks. In order to get this visa, you must bring X $1 million into our country, hire 10 local workers, and if you meet these benchmarks preliminarily, then we'll give you the visa. And then to continue renewing that visa, you have to hit these benchmarks of hiring local workers and bringing money to our economy. We, in our antiquated system, don't have that. So it's just this broken system that doesn't fit squarely almost all the time with what someone is seeking to do.
I glanced at one of your videos, and you maybe I'm wrong. I thought I heard something about you employment, familial, and then investment.
Right. So there's two types. There's a temporary non-immigrant investor visa called the E2 visa, which is for foreign nationals from certain countries that have a treaty with the U.S., of which currently is not eligible, to most people's surprise, India, China, Brazil, Russia, a whole host of other countries. You can Google the E2 treaty trader countries or treaty investor countries.
The list of countries that
have a treaty with the U.S.
Yeah, so it's only going to be the ones that are. It's going to be the treaties that are going to be listed, not the ones that don't have treaties.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So if you're on that list, you're eligible for an E2 visa, and you have to be coming to the U.S. to make a, quote, substantial investment in a U.S. business. That's just for that temporary visa. Technically supposed to be proportional to the type of business you're coming to run. So, if you're coming to run let's say a food trailer truck is probably a lot less than if you're coming to run a semiconductor fabrication facility. However, currently the trend is immigration officers want to see a foreign national investing as close to $100,000 US, because that, in their estimation, is enough to get your equipment, get your employees, get your office, pay for your electricity, so on and so forth. You got to be coming here, and that's a temporary visa. On the other side, on the immigrant visa or the permanent resident side, there is a investor visa program for people of significant wealth to basically buy their way into a green card. And that's the EB-5 program. Currently, it's for foreign nationals either investing $1.9 million into certain businesses that are going to create jobs for 10 U.S. workers, or $900,000 into certain areas of high unemployment that are also going to create jobs for 10 U.S. workers. It's not a fast way. People often go, oh, I'm very wealthy. I have millions of dollars, happy to buy myself a green card, and I should be able to get that in 30 days, 60 days. No, that process is, you're looking at typically 3 or 4 years wait time. I have a great illustration show people of what an EB-5 application looks like. It's usually 2 to 4 feet of paperwork. And so people look at it and go, oh my God, who's going to read that thing? And then I say, ask me how long it's going to take to get an answer on this. And then I tell them, yeah, when we file this, you'll get an answer on it in like 2 to 4 years. They go, oh, okay.
And are there performance requirements? Like, okay, so you've got your green card, you show up, you promise to do a certain number of things. We're going to check up on you in a certain period of time.
Yeah, in fact, on that EB-5 application in particular, when you submit that application, you say, hey, I've made the investment of $900,000. Here's the 10 jobs I've created. Here's the project. And here's, tracking the source of funds to make sure the money I'm bringing into the U.S. is clean money. It's not coming from a terrorist or drug dealer. When that application goes in, and after 2 to 4 years, they say, great, we'll give you what's called a conditional lawful permanent resident card. Same thing as a regular permanent resident card or green card. You can live with it permanently. You can work. However, this card's only good for 2 years. 90 days before the 2-year expiration date on that card, you must file a subsequent application to show us that your money's still there, the 10 U.S. jobs are still there, and if after that, then we'll give you your unconditional lawful permanent resident card. So yeah, there's benchmarks in there for sure. Yeah, the U.S. government is not messing around with any of these things. We can talk about H-1Bs and other stuff like that. They're serious when it comes to this.
What can somebody who's just thinking about that process now? They're getting ready to get married, and they know that they're going to need to get the green card. They want to apply for the green card, but it's just this black pit of unknown. How can we turn the lights on in there and move that forward?
I mean, look, I'm biased. I'm an immigration attorney, but whether it's me or anyone else, I sincerely want to talk to an attorney. Why? Because the process is rife with pitfalls. And we're coming out of an administration that, as we all know, wasn't the biggest fan of immigrants. And they were trying their hardest to make the process as challenging as possible for immigrants. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. And so and it's not that, oh, we have a new president right now and, oh, the switch is flipped back the other way and, oh, it's so easy and everyone comes. It doesn't work like that. Okay. Immigration officers have a very difficult job. USCIS officers, Department of State officers have a very difficult job protecting, the country, protecting our security, protecting American jobs, all those things which are very, very important. And what we see too often is immigration officers emboldened to say no. So the failure to check the right box, the failure to dot an I, cross a T, can be the end of that application, the end of all your time, your money, and effort. So This is not a process that people do by themselves. This isn't. There's no TurboTax for immigration law.
So the very first step would be to call Jason Finkelman or somebody like Jason.
Really, I mean, sincerely. And even if you go, oh, I just looked at this, I know what the applications are, I get it, I can do it myself, it's at least worthwhile dipping your toe into really understanding what you're about to get into by speaking to an immigration attorney to just paint that picture to know you don't have to have an attorney to file this stuff. You can do it all by yourself. But the risk of doing it wrong, it's cataclysmic.
Do people come to you with questions or cases that are really unreasonable? Like there's just no way this is going to work out.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I would say oftentimes, and going back to sort of the core of the conversation, people say, "Oh, yeah, I got a bunch of money," or "Oh, yeah, I want to start a business here. I want to get a visa." And when I explain to them the different non-immigrant visa categories, they quickly realize it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole, and they're not going to want to do that. They're not eligible for it, and yeah, that happens quite frequently.
But not so much on okay, so but on a more pedestrian level, somebody shows
Oh,
up, you know.
oh, yeah, no, I have it happens, I'd say a handful of times every year where people say, "Oh, I want to engage in a fraudulent marriage so I can get a green card." And that I'm sure happens a ton. The second I hear that, I basically say, "I am not your immigration attorney. I'm not the guy you want to deal with. I'm sorry. Don't do that." Yeah, this conversation's done, and I run from those types of those cases.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of fun, even though that you probably walk a very fine line on a daily basis. But what's a good day for Jason?
That's a great question. Let me think about that one. Yeah, a great day for me is honestly it's well, it's two. A great day for me is handing someone their green card. That moment of that person reflecting back on their journey from perhaps starting off as a student to working for some employer to moving to different employers to hoping that employer would sponsor them for their green card, or even for spouses, to come here and finally feel secure in this country with the one they love. It's beautiful. The other thing, and I mean, I've gone to, I don't know, several dozen naturalization ceremonies, but if anyone who's listening, you don't have to have family or friends. Go to a naturalization ceremony. It will renew your pride and spirit in this wonderful, beautiful, amazing country that we are so lucky to live in. I realize these are trying times. This may be a low point in our historical arc, and the last 4 years may have been chaotic. But at the end of the day, we live in an amazing country, and one that we should be proud of, especially as an immigration attorney, hearing people's stories from all over the world. And to get to sit in that naturalization ceremony and see all those people. I mean, I'm getting emotional just talking about it now, and I deal with this every day. It never seeks to take my breath away. To be in that room where people raise their hand and take an oath to this country is just a beautiful thing, especially when how much everyone wants to be in this country.
Jason, I hope we meet face to face soon.
Likewise, I
Uh,
wish you lots of luck with this, and keep me posted if you have any other questions or need anything else.
When I finished editing this session, I checked the timer. It stood at about 38 minutes. Jason and we chatted for nearly 2 hours, and we covered everything, it seemed at the time at least. During the editing, I kept hearing Bob Seger asking the question in his 1980s hit Against the Wind, what to leave in, what to leave out. Before I summarize my chat with Jason, here are some numbers. Regardless of what we as Americans, as well as the rest of the world, think of U.S. immigration, we stand pretty tall on the global stage. Currently, 51 million immigrants are in the USA today. That's more than the next 5 countries combined. That's also 20% of the total number of immigrants worldwide. That's also 15% of our own population. And in that regard, we rank near the top, if not the top, of all countries, with the obvious special cases removed. And by special cases, I mean the extremely large but empty, such as Australia and Canada, and the extremely small with tax incentives, such as Macau, Monaco, Switzerland, and Singapore, as well as the extremely extreme Saudi Arabia and the United Emirates are good examples of that. There are more than 180 different types of visas. There were 4 million non-immigrant visas of the temporary sort issued in 2020. There were 1 million immigrant visas of the permanent green card type issued in 2019. There are 55,000 diversity immigrant visas, that's the green card lottery, issued every year. And for this lottery, there are over 12 million applicants. I leave it to better minds than mine to discuss where we are, how we got here, and where we're going. But here is what I learned with my time with Jason and what I will remember. A lot of people want to come to the USA, and the USA welcomes a lot of people. But the path to legal residence, either temporary or permanent, is both complicated and expensive. So whether you wish to come to the United States temporarily or permanently, and whether it's for your work or your family, number one, get informed now. Number two, talk to an attorney. Even if you don't plan to use their services, just talk to them. Number three, get organized and stay organized. Number four, collect your documents and collect a lot of them. Number five, plan for the details. And by details, Jason suggested your history of your family, of yourself, the history of your work, your taxes, your education, and your employer's got to do the same thing. He's got to get some rather detailed details, such as the floor space of the offices, the floor plans, the coworkers, and the education of the coworkers, and beyond. Number six, overperform and oversupply. And number seven, probably the most important, is play the long game and be patient. And now a bit of a disclaimer. I did the best I could with this information, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of information out there. And if I missed something or misrepresented something or simply said something wrong, I mean it. It was entirely unintentional, and I apologize. And now here's a request. If you would like us to cover the subject of immigration in more detail, please let me know. Lastly, thank you, Jason Finkelman, for your patience and time and for sharing your knowledge. It was really a good session. Thank you. Expats in Austin. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Expats in Austin. If you want to hear more from the Expats in Austin, go ahead and join the Expats in Austin Facebook group. And of course, please download and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Please join me, Kurt Russell, the next time we meet the Expats in Austin.